Thank you, everyone, for coming out today. This represents the first in the Kashmir-Palestine Scholars Solidarity Network conversation series. Today, we will be launching the conversation series with a film screening of the movie Bring Him Back, directed by Fahad Shah, as well as produced by Talat, Bhat. And then after the film screening, we will be in conversation with Palestinian academic Dr. Suhad Nashef. Before this film starts, we're very excited about it. I would like to introduce my colleague, Dr. Emma Brandlund, who will speak a little bit more about the series as well as the participants in the thing today. But before that, I would like to mention that today's event and conversation series is dedicated to the cause of Fahad Shah himself, the director of this film, who is currently in jail. Mr. Shah is an independent journalist from the region of Jammu and Kashmir and has been in prison for the last 8 months and is an independent journalist who was the editor of the Kashmiri Walla web service. So without further ado, let me go to my colleague, Dr. Emma Brandlund from the University of West of England. My name, by the way, is Tawfiq Haddad from the Council of British Research in the Levant. And this broadcast today is coming from Jerusalem.
Thank you, Tawfiq, and welcome everyone. Great to have you here. So after the film, we have two speakers. We have Suhad Nashef, who is a medical and cultural anthropologist and who works at Keele University. And she's originally trained as an occupational therapist, and she holds a master in health sciences and a PhD in sociology and anthropology. And her work, she's worked in several research institutions in the College of Medicine at Qatar University in Qatar, and now she's at Keele University. And she works on the intersection of health and death practices in the Middle Eastern region. Our second speaker is the editing director and producer of Bring Him Back, Talat Bhat. And he is an activist and documentary maker, trade unionist based in Sweden. He's a project leader of Jammu and Kashmir television network, which is the first web TV of Kashmir and seeks to present different programs on the issue of Kashmir and bring together a dialogue between all parts of the occupied areas, both under Pakistan and Indian control. And he also works in trade union filmmaking and labor filmmaking. So without further ado, I think we're going to start the film. And so I hope you will all find this very interesting, and we're looking forward to the speakers afterwards. Thank you all again.
All right, so just give me a second while we do the technical aspects of it. We do want to point out that this film can be viewed on Vimeo for free as provided by the production house. And let me share my screen. You look up Bring Him Back. Let me just get hang on, I've got to share my screen. There we go. I've shared the screen, right? Okay. And now, are we ready? So there we go. So, what is it? Ah, okay, good, makes sense. Okay, we're ready. So after the film is 25 minutes roughly. After which will be followed by comments and analysis and insights of Dr. Suhad Nashef Zahir. So here we go, folks. Is it working?
ठीक है सगळ्यात बोलायचं माझी
तमिkin bulunmadı maşadan babat. Ezun darkas, sadras, tatsu. Diğer bari tatsu.
Em kadar şey istaya.
Şehit gari istaya. O sadine.
İte cavan.
Cavan dit lakat mosum bayça. Natruin doh kana layık. O azay dedi. Sana gobra ruh royzer.
İnşallah.
Dun ko royzer.
İnşallah.
Öyle go. Öyle çiğne koyun.
İnşallah.
Temelhan go bunu biçaren nişane koyun. Öyle var tul öyle kava öyle ganta koha pir bala pir.
Gani nişayeden. Akveri mazur karım. Biçim guy mazur karım. Dumun mazur karım. Vatlan mazur karım. Paplayım. Talat lagi tasın zıy. Miskin asın zıy. Toya karım mazur. Man thonam military vayla gobar. Aga kadamiz.
Mes savunmak istiyorum. Emkin mesuliyetini çift sadras. Taşa do mobil sabas muj. To mensagem está sendo nervoso de bagat, você está muj. To сейчас рано быть сейчас своя стоит от самжит. Я тасан жальбай ба процесс после карти. Чакам укан койда аз эти таса садет. Трехар делас модел капарвири. Тайшетас модел. Таса садет я мужу пос, сос мага азеди. Азеди мужу пос дезактас пос. Atmasın dünyasımız kan punum, maaş denna ya biyen denna, bayan denna tasın değer var ki vapas. Digo söz konum. Yasan tasın değer var yani bu söz buzuruk. Bu zaman agar bu malahate maga tasın değer var ya söz goli var bu. Bu çare iska. Yes, pe seta tasum yad, Korea thas portim tragamas mans. Tasum bachpan. Dahan varian tam portim tait. Bobul sapan. Tempat has ya go dai hoer go site pass khasan porn has varmil. Varmil has portim mas pe var ya tasunas. Vegdasme khas kairat. Tasum bachpan. क्या ओस करान क्या नोस करान सो तस कोतो जोर ओस देवस अत पढ़ाई पेट मल सत मोल फादर तसन जोस कराव सचकम पेट हस करनाया ते वारिया ये ख तरकी अत पढ़ाई मज ओस तस जहनस मज ओस तस निकी पेटाई सख पढ़ाई हुन ब करहा शौक ओसुस ब करहा सटा पढ़ाई त करन ते इंशाल्लाह सटा पढ़ाई ते मज कर त्रेगमस मज ते पढ़ाई तिम कर सोप्रस मज ते पढ़ाई तिम कॉलेजन हुन नाव छ मे गोमत मशत ना छम तिम ती या रोज में छम जहनस मज छम विकनस यावा कि पतस पतस पोर्ति वारे हस कालस वर मिलस मज ततस करो सारे डिग्री विग्री हासिल पतस सो लोगमत ये वारे हस कालस या मास्टर वडिया थे बबुल साहब तम पता पोर तम तत्ते ये वारिया कोन अत वारिया पेवस जहनस मज याद दपान इंसान क्या कोतास बचपन क्या होस क्या नोस
जिंदा रहना और एक आजाद इंसान के माशरे की तरह अपने मुस्तकबल को संवारना, अपने माशरे को बनाना, अपनी भविष्यत और अपनी सारी सूरत हाल को और अपनी सब सूरत हाल बनाना, ये हमारा पैदाइशी हक है। और हर वो शख्स, हर वो कौम, हर वो हुकूमत, हर वो इंसान जो हक की मुखालफत करेगा, हम उसके खिलाफ उस वक्त तक लड़ते रहेंगे जब तक हम फतह से हम किनार नहीं होंगे।
क्या हेको वन हेकान वन जेन से मज रोदमुत तम तस पत कोता क्या कराव कित पाजा कित क्या कराव हम दे खुदायस कुन अत मज शुक्र गुजार क्या रिच वत पे गई नाकार वत पे कि अमि किन बत हेकान दोहा दोहा कर नत हेका न कि बे तम पोट अमि पुश गसान मे वारिया एहसास पन्निस पानस में दस अगर सो यूत कराव तस पे खुर गशी वनस बह मज तस मकबर वो तस मकबर प्रथ जाए वनस खाली ये शहरस मज खाली त्रिगामस मज खाली मकबर बनत तिस कत ना क्या बह पकान प्रथ कुन जाए दपान खुदाया कैसा करू खुदायस मंगनी करो कुन रंग कह हासिल गसा गसन दी
नहीं, जब आप ये कहेंगे वतन हमारा है तो उससे उन लोगों का आवाम मर्द उठने चाहिए जिन लोगों जो दिमागों में, जिनके जहनों में हमारी कौम को या हमारे वतन को गुलाम बनाने के ख्वाहिशात हैं, गुलाम बनाने के गुमान हैं, उनके आवाम उनके तर्क नहीं रखने चाहिए। इतनी जोर से, इतनी वालियत से, इतने लगाव हमारा लगाइए। ये वतन, ये वतन, ये वतन, ये वतन, अगर ये वतन हमारा है तो बताइए इसमें हुकूमत किसे करनी चाहिए? फिर मैं कहूँगा इस पर हुकूमत आप जवाब दीजिए, हम करेंगे। इस पर हुकूमत, इस पर हुकूमत, इस पर हुकूमत, कोई अगर आप हुकूमत करेंगे इस पर किसकी हिफाजत कौन करेगा? किस चीन से करवाएंगे? पाकिस्तान से करवाएंगे? हिंदुस्तान से करवाएंगे? रूस से करवाएंगे? अमेरिका से करवाएंगे? तो किससे करवाएंगे? इसकी हिफाजत, इसकी हिफाजत, इसकी हिफाजत, इसकी हिफाजत
सठा फकर चोर गुल गई मे शहीद गोजक गो मकबूल साहब तम पत गो हबीबुल्लाह भट्ट तम पत गो गुलाम नबी भट्ट तम पत गो मंजूर अहमद भट्ट।
इस आजादी की जान कौन लड़ेगा? नहीं, ईमानदारी से बताइए। आज फैसला कीजिए। आज हमें यह ऐद करना है कि इसकी आजादी की जान कौन लड़ेगा? आप लड़ेंगे तो मैं कहूँगा इसकी जंग आप हम लड़ेंगे। आजादी की जंग नहीं, आप पूरे जोश के साथ, पूरे अज़्म के साथ और दिल के साथ गहराई से आपकी आवाज निकलनी चाहिए। हाथ बुलंद करके नारा लगाइए, आजादी की जंग, आजादी की जंग, आजादी की जंग।
यह गो मकबूल साहब ने कुछ जो बयान करान ये पढ़ान खर्चा लकट तो पे खर्चा ये गो तस कमर ये सचा यह कमर बस पान ये कमरस मज शुनित रात दोहस और तो बस कमरस मज ये ईद कोई
वो फारूक
ईद कोई
वो शफी
शफी क्या ईद कोई
ईद कोई
ईद कोई
एक इल्जाम ये भी लगाया जाता है कि हम अक़वाम मुत्तहिदा के करारों को तस्लीम नहीं करते। हम कहते हैं और कहेंगे कि क्या कहते हैं कि अक़वाम मुत्तहिदा चीज क्या है, अक़वाम मुत्तहिदा के करारों में चीज क्या है। हम कहते हैं कि सुन्नादीन चीज क्या है। हमने कश्मीर में तस्लीम नहीं किया। उस जमाने में जबकि यहाँ एक फौज जाने की सनत थी, हमने उसकी गलतियां उगैर दी, हमने उसकी खिलाफ वर्जी की, हमने कश्मीर को तोड़ दिया।
इन हार्ट बाय साजस के को बोल मैं खदाया म्यून कार्य तो को बोल तास शहर कैसे इंसान बात में और मैं खदाया कार्य को बोल इन बाबत बाय साजस नहीं मैं खदाया इन हार्ट बाय साजस को भी खाली मुश्किल पता जेल वारिया को वक्त सोच गो पता या पेशोवर सोल साइल है क्यों से पर गो तस वारिया पन जहन ओस तस जहन हज ओस बरले पद हिसाबस मन सो जहन ओस अस तस मलिस माज आल सो जहन तस बोजन कि पटिस क्या जहन तस पढ़ाई को ये पे गो पत पाकिस्तान तत गो तम नेथर युक नेथर तुक योर गो वारिया कल तत तुल तम वारिया सख्ती तुल तम तत बस सो सख्ती मे पेवान याद तस क्या ये गसित सो चोल ये जेल मन ये सेंटर जेल चोल पत न्यू सो तत कर तस बे सख्ती कर बे तम पत कर 3 जेलस मन कोर ये गिरफ्तार तत कोर पत बराबर तौर तस मुलाकातस गमस तत तस बेड गिंडित बेड मुझ तुक तसन मुलाकात इत पे दायर की बे दुक न कि वहाँ मे वारिया तसन याद मगर वह जहनस मे सोरे गुमुत मे मशित योत इंसान दपान इंसान खुदाया न ती तो बह कर अमन अगर आया प्रत कस रबित अस्थान ते पीरन ते हमसायन शहरस पहाड़स फेरा दपान तसन मकबल गस योर दिन
आपकी कौमी आजादी की मरकबत खड़ा करे, चाहे वो इस मुल्क का रहने वाला दुश्मन आपका है कि नहीं है। ईमानदारी से बताइए दुश्मन है कि नहीं है। उसके खिलाफ जंग लड़ना आपका फर्ज है कि नहीं है। उसके खिलाफ जंग लड़ना जहाज है कि नहीं है। अगर है तो इस जहाज के लिए तैयार कीजिए अपने आप को और हुक्मरान टोले को, उन तमाम लोगों को जो जंग बनी लाइन के उस तरफ हिंदुस्तान के एजेंट मुकाबला अदा कर रहे हैं और जंग बनी लाइन के उस तरफ पाकिस्तान की नौकरशाही के एजेंट मुकाबला कर रहे हैं। उनके खिलाफ हर महाज पर, चाहे वो सियासी महाज है, चाहे वो इलेक्शन का महाज है, चाहे वो जंग का महाज है।
पकम प्रत
करो अस्ति करो दुआ गसन कम
मकबर सो ये लास्ट जो वापस
अस्ति दुआ करान तो गवर्नमेंटस अपील करा कि सोजन जो बॉडी वो इनको वापस भेजें क्योंकि वो कश्मीरी था। कश्मीरी जो है हमारी सेकुलरिज्म में वो भी रखते थे। इसके साथ साथ वो एक कश्मीरी होने के साथ साथ वो एक अच्छे इंसान भी थे। हमारा यही है कि जो उसकी बॉडी है उसको अगर कश्मीर में लाकर दफन किया जाए तो वो ठीक है। हम अपील करेंगे यही कि उसकी बॉडी को कश्मीर में आपको दिया जाए। सारी सिख बरादरी जो है इसके साथ में है। ये हमारी अपना कौमियत है। वो इधरी का कश्मीरी था, वो इधरी का रहने वाला था, जिससे हमारा जो भी कुछ है हमारा कश्मीर में ही है।
اَسہِ چھُ وَسُن نیٖمِس چھُ اَسہِ وَسُن سرینگر تَتہِ چھِ جیل بَرو تحریٖک چھِ اَسہِ چھُ تور وَسُن تہٕ تَتہِ آسہِ گِرفتٲری تہٕ اَسہِ چھِ تَتہِ گِرفتٲری دِنۍ ژٕ چھَکھ بُزرٕگ ژٕ مہٕ وَس تور کینٛہہ ژٕ کیٛاہ کَرنہِ وَسکھ تور ژٕ مہٕ وَس تور کِہیٖنۍ
بہٕ وَسہٕ مےٚ چھُ سورُے وَسہٕ باسان یہِ چھُنہٕ کینٛہہ مےٚ چھُ خۄدایَس جِگرٕ دوٚپمُت مےٚ ہٮ۪کہٕ ؤسِتھ تٔمۍ کوٚرُم نہٕ کینٛہہ بہٕ وَسہٕ
ژٕ وَسکھ تور ژٕ ہٮ۪کھا ؤسِتھ تور
بہٕ وَسہٕ مےٚ ضروٗری وَسُن مےٚ چھُ واریاہ ظُلم وٕچھمُت بہٕ روزٕ وَسُن لَگان تہٕ بہٕ وَسہٕ ضروٗری مےٚ ظُلم واریاہ ظُلم وٕچھ مےٚ چھُنہٕ أزکُے ظُلم وٕچھُن کینٛہہ مےٚ چھُ برونٛہہ کھۄتہٕ وٕچھمُت ظُلم مےٚ گوٚو تَنہٕ پٮ۪ٹھ مےٚ محبت صٲب خٲر صٲب شہیٖد گوٚو تَنہٕ گوٚو مےٚ ظُلمٕے وٕچھان بہٕ ہٮ۪کہٕ نہٕ روٗزِتھ ییٚتہِ کینٛہہ مےٚ چھُ وَسُن ضروٗری وٕچھ حظ سون بَسَن حظ ووٚن سٲری دَپان ٲسۍ پٲکِستانٕکۍ تہِ تہٕ ہِندُستانٕکۍ یہِ ہسا چھُ گڑا تورُک اَجنٛٹ گڑا یورُک یہِ اوس نہ اوس یہِ تورُک اَجنٛٹ تہٕ نہ اوس یہِ یورُک یہِ اوس درٛامُت آزٲدی باپَتھ یُس آزٲدی ژھانٛڈان چھِ یُس آزٲدی سٲنۍ بَچہٕ تہِ چھِ وٕنکٮ۪نَس تہِ ژھانٛڈان تَژھ بَچہٕ تہِ سٲنۍ بَچہٕ تہِ سورُے یہِ ہا یہِ کَشمیٖر چھِ ژھانٛڈان آزٲدی باپَتھ اوس سُہ درٛامُت سُہ اوس نہٕ درٛامُت اَمہِ باپَتھ کیازِ یہِ تِمو وَنان یا ہِندُستانَن ووٚن یا پٲکِستانَن ووٚن تَمہِ باپَتھ اوس نہٕ سُہ کینٛہہ وۄنۍ چھُس اِنشاء اللہ اَمہِ کِنۍ چھَس بہٕ یَتھ آمُت یہِ چھُ اَسہِ یہِ چھُنہٕ تَتھ سُنٛد مقبر چھُنٕے کیازِ یَتھ چھَس بہٕ أمِس أپیٖل کَران یہِ چھُ اَسہِ اَنُن جوٚم گژھِ یہِ گژھِ یُن یور اَننہٕ تَوَے ہسا چھَس بہٕ آمٕژ تَوَے چھَس ژےٚ ہُہ اوٚنمُت نَتہٕ یہِ تَس وَنان ٲسۍ تیٚلہِ حظ اوس نہٕ سُہ کینٛہہ سُہ اوس خٲلی آزٲدی باپَتھ ژھانٛڈان سُہ اوس ہِندُستانَس پٲکِستانَس تہِ وَنان ییٚتہِ گوٚو پٲکِستان تَتہِ تہِ یہِ ہا یہِ دوٚپہَس نہ یہِ چھُ ہِندُستانُک اَجنٛٹ آو یور تہٕ دوٚپہَس ییٚتہِ چھُ پٲکِستانُک اَجنٛٹ تہِ چھُ مےٚ ووٚنمُت سورُے خبر کیٛاہ کوٚر تَتھ سۭتۍ ہِندُستانَن تہِ تہٕ پٲکِستانَن تہِ تَمیُک چھُنہٕ کینٛہہ مگر سُہ اوس اَکھ آزٲدی باپَتھ درٛامُت بیٚیہِ اوس نہٕ کینٛہہ یُتُے أسۍ تہِ چھِ زِندٕ أسۍ تہِ چھِنہٕ توٚتُے ترٛاوُن کِہیٖنۍ سٲنۍ بَچہٕ اگر کیٛاہ گژھِ تِمَن بَچَن ہٕنٛدۍ بَچہِ اَسہِ چھِ آزٲدی ژھانٛڈٕنۍ تَتھ نِش مِنشَس چھِ اَسہِ رٲچھ کَرٕنۍ یہِ مقصد سون یُس اَسہِ مقصد چھُ مقصد میون چھُ یِہے گژھِ یَتھ مقبرَس منٛز ہٮ۪کہِ کَرُن یہِ دَفن
کوٚرُس دِژٕکھ پھٲسۍ تہٕ کرفیوٗ لوگُکھ سٲرسٕے نہ اخبار تہٕ نہ نِوٕز نہ نیٹَس کِہیٖنۍ آے نہٕ أمۍ چھُکھ سورُے کوٚرمُت بنٛد نہ چھِ یِوان ظہوٗر صٲبَس پرٛژھان مےٚ ظہوٗر صٲبَن ووٚن نہ چھِ یِوان نہ چھِ نیٹَس کُنہِ نہ چھِ اخبار کُنہِ تہٕ نہ چھِ کِہیٖنۍ سورُے چھِ بنٛد بیٚیہِ پاوَر اگر آو تہٕ ٹی وی یَس ہاوان
تٔمۍ سُنٛد تہِ گژھان دِنۍ واپَس مقبوٗل صٲبُن تہِ تہٕ عبدُل صٲبنہِ گژھان دِنۍ واپَس ڈٮ۪ڈ باڈی گژھان واپَس دِنۍ تِمَن حظ اوس یہِ اَکٕے گۄناہ تِم ٲسۍ لَڑان کٔشیٖرِ ہِنٛدِ باپَتھ تَمے کِنۍ دوٚپُکھ یہِ ژٕ کٔرۍزِ یِمَن پھٲسۍ Neyse basan, menes geçeceğim, çok bir nice purs.
Police olsun diyor, zor subspat. Tutum sana zor subs, seçim diye tas picha, ele tas karoshi tas bunu garnion ki has.
चलो ठीक है करस फोन पता बस घर इजन की और इजन की
अच्छा हिंदुस्तान कहता मकबूल मारित आके गर्म नेर आख मकबूल बसलस पत कहता मारन इंसान का फूल
आज ते शिकस पगत के शिकस हिंदुस्तान मर्तन कहतन मकबूलन मार सरी बनियामत मकबूल मकबूल.
We will carry on fighting for you. Yeah. I'm seeing Eid God from back on my hopeful eyes are dreaming of a day when an empty grave will realize its meaning, when a son will finally hug his long awaiting mother. The bosom of this land is where he's meant to rest forever. Subservient to God who never kneeled to no man, took to gallows for his people. Here's the thought that they can hang a persecuted populace as heroes in a dream, and a memory that glorifies the struggle to be free. An ideologue of liberation, jailed even after death, no funeral, no grave, just a face that is meant to rest in hearts of his people. The sacrifice of life is to show all that's evil, the truth lives forever. Remember this beacon, a fight for our freedom, but still held captive by forces of reason. The tyrants who buried his body in prison should know that he lives on in thoughts of his people. When you come home, we will march up to Eidgah, fist in the air, we will march up to Eidgah. Till you come home, we will carry on fighting, writing on the wall, we will carry on fighting. When you come home, we will march up to Eidgah, fist in the air, we will march up to Eidgah. Till you come home, we will carry on fighting, writing on the wall, we will carry on fighting. And we talk of a martyr, a man who overcame fear with love as his armor. The voice of the voiceless, the son of a farmer, whose aim was to conquer the hate of a tyrant, giving way to a charter. A martyr who left a dream for his nation to follow tomorrow, his feet of liberation. The seeds of a unified fight of a nation are sown by his ration of right to liberation. From Gilgit to Sopo, our destiny is one. Bring home a freedom fighter, a father, a son who stood for the truth, kissed gallows for his rights, who's missed by the soil, whom he gifted all his life. Till the people rise, will your conscience cry? It's a God truth, murder they can't justify. And as long as we live, we shall testify. Just how many can you persecute or crucify? When you come home, we will march up to Eidgah, fist in the air, we will march up to Eidgah. Till you come home, we will carry on fighting, writing on the wall, we will carry on fighting. When you come home, we will march up to Eidgah, fist in the air, we will march up to Eidgah. Till you come home, we will carry on fighting, writing on the wall, we will carry on fighting for you. When you come home, we will march up to Eidgah, fist in the air, we will march up to Eidgah. Till you come home, we will carry on fighting, writing on the wall, we will carry on fighting. When you come home, we will march up to Eidgah, fist in the air, we will march up to Eidgah. Till you come home, we will carry on fighting, writing on the wall, we will carry on fighting for you. Yeah, we will carry on fighting for you. Till you come home, yeah. We will carry on fighting, carry on fighting, carry on fighting for you. We will carry on fighting, carry on fighting, carry on fighting for you.
I'm gonna stop the share, right? Hit the lights over here. Sorry. So we have just finished watching or screening Bring Him Back, the film by Fahad Shah, directed by Fahad Shah and produced by Talat Bhat from Raw Films. As I said, you can check out find it online and spread it. It's also important to note that Fahad is currently in jail in India and has been for the last 8 months, and the The next part of this event will entail Dr. Suhad Nashef speaking to the Palestinian dimension of this phenomena, namely the phenomena of withholding bodies and preventing families from grieving. So without further ado, we're going to go, please, Suhad, Dr. Nashef, please take it away.
Yeah. Hi, good afternoon. I want to share my screen. I have just 3 slides. It's okay? Okay.
Yes, you have 3 slides. Yeah. You can share your screen. You should be able to share screen.
Let me see. No, because host disabled participants screen sharing, you have to.
We have just made your screen shareable, hopefully, so try now.
Okay. Yes, it works.
Great.
Screen. Go. Sure. You see my screen?
We do indeed.
Okay. Full screen. Yes. Here we go. So good afternoon again, and thank you very much to Tawfiq and Emma for inviting me for the invitation to reflect, to connect, and to discuss a basic human rights issue, or maybe more correct to say human remains rights. I believe that this topic did not gain enough attention of researchers in social and political sciences, especially when we talk about colonized and occupied zones such as Kashmir and Palestine. The tendency is mostly to voice the lived, but the dead still need to be more voiced. And I think that the media, cinema or journalism did better than academia in this matter, especially in the Arab region where human remains rights are very much ignored for many reasons that we can elaborate more later on. Now, I'm not going to make analytical and philosophical entries or theorizing withholding dead bodies, but will highlight more some insights, some shared and crossing points between the Kashmiri experience as represented in the documentary and the Palestinian experience as I documented in my study during 2016. Now, just to contextualize withholding the Palestinian martyrs' dead bodies. Now, you can see on my screen that we have on the right side in Arabic, Bidna Awladna, which means we want our children, which was the title of the campaign of families that they wanted back the bodies of their beloved after they were detained and frozen by the Israeli military forces. Now, historically, during the late 60s, Israel buried, Israel had buried fallen Palestinians in undisclosed zones in which each corpse was designated by a number. These graves called the secret cemeteries of numbers. The reports tell about 4 cemeteries in different zones within Israel's borders, but a few reports actually tell about 5. The policy practiced again by Israel later during the last Palestinian Al-Quds or Jerusalem uprising in October 2015. Back then, Israel again began to withhold killed Palestinians' bodies, but this time storing them in refrigerators. Now, tens of families experienced the detention and release of the frozen dead body of their relatives, and up until June 2022, different news resources reported that Israel withholds approximately 100 Palestinian bodies in its refrigerators, and approximately 255 remains are still buried in the secret cemeteries of numbers. In 2008, the Jerusalem Legal and Human Rights Center, or JLAC, established what called the National Campaign for Retrieval of Palestinian and Arab War Victims' Bodies, when the family of Mashhur al-Aruri, these are his mother and father, who was killed during a confrontation with Israeli soldiers in 1976, asked the Jerusalem Center for Legal and Human Rights to help retrieve his body from the cemeteries of numbers. Now, Mashhur's body was released in 2009, and this is his coffin with his picture on it during the burial ritual. So, and actually he was released in 2009, but the center campaign continued its work with the aim of securing the release of all Palestinian and Arab corpses in the cemeteries of Number, and they succeeded in releasing tens of corpses, including the body of Hafiz Abu Zant, who was killed with a Mashhur al-Aruri in the same confrontation. And this is a photo of his father kissing his remains after he was back, and also he was also respected in a ritual ceremony as the family wanted to. Now the campaign supported also recent families campaign, what I mentioned before, Bidna Awladna, or we want our children to receive back their beloved frozen bodies. Now, the duration of detention and freezing the bodies varies. It can be days, it can be months, it can be sometimes. Some of the bodies actually were held for more than a year. And the detention period depends mainly on the development and negotiations between the Israeli side and the Palestinian families regarding the release conditions. Coming back to bring him back documentary, when I actually watched the documentary, the first thing that came to my mind is Mashhur al-Aruri's mother and other mothers who became politically and socially strong and active for what they called all sons of the nation. This collectivism that blurs gender hierarchies, religiosity, and social class differences is one of the powers of the families who collectively demanded having back the remains of their beloved. And Fanon actually in his Dying Colonialism discuss this blurring of hierarchies, either gender, class, etc., when there is in colonized zones. Some sentences and statements in the documentary sound so familiar, actually, to be honest, and similar to the voices of families interviewed in the study. If there is any interest, I will post later on a link to the study if anyone interested to read the entire piece of the study. Now, for example, when a woman said, when Afzal was hanged, I felt as if my son was once again hanged. Or when another woman said, our children, their children, we demand freedom. Or when the religious man said, this is our national issue. Or another woman said, they killed many Maqbuls, making Maqbul a nation body, not of one family body, a collective symbol for freedom and the right to bring back all remains to their families. Now, the collectivity was clear in the Palestinian case as well. One father, for example, said, when we released him from home, people took him. I explained to the martyrs' families, these are not your sons. These are Palestine's sons. We took them from their homes to the mosque. There I gave the last look. After that, I don't know who took him, who carried him. Israel attempted to fracture this collectivity by individual negotiations with families, but simultaneously many Palestinian families resisted these pressures and conditions by dealing with the dead body as a national body and Palestine's sons. We could see that the families of frozen and detained bodies turned their personal pain into a national pain and refused personal negotiation addressing the release of all detained and frozen bodies. They used to meet, even to plan, to agree or disagree in what they call the cemeteries, the martyrs tent. Each time a Palestinian was killed by a military soldiers, they opened a condolence tent and families came to express their collective pain, empathy, sympathy with the family. Now, collectivity in the film also, when women gathered, supported the mother, and when they, alongside with men, went to protest. Similarly, in the Palestinian context, they all protested. and still protesting against bodies detention. So you can see that men and women together, and as I mentioned before, when it comes to resistance, gender hierarchies kind of blurred. The study explores roles played by women. In fact, women played a dominant role and created support group for the mothers of the dead. Actually, women's gathering in the film, it took me back to a photo of Palestinian mothers who gathered and discussed their beloved fate. Also, mothers participated in the funerals and carried the coffins of their sons and daughters for the first time in the Palestinian society. Women expressed solidarity, and the mother even expected solidarity from the female president in the documentary. Now, this hope of the mother that the president may have empathy to her feelings as a mother can be seen as, or can be perceived as, kind of a survival belief, or similarly, making empty graves can be perceived as survival tool to, that Maqbool's mother and other families use it as the place that connects them with their beloved dead. Now, in the study and documentary, we could see how families' lives are transformed and become totally dedicated to demanding the remains. It's like each family has 3 life courses: before the death, during the detention, and after the release. Now, some interviewees in the study reported how their lives frozen, and they even felt cold in summer days, as a reflection of their feelings toward their beloved frozen bodies. As, for example, one wife I remember mentioned how she continuously felt cold throughout the whole period of her husband's body detention in the refrigerators. Another mother said, for example, I couldn't do anything. I was very sick. It was winter and I was very cold. I got the flu all the time. I felt like I was in the refrigerator. People told me this was the result of sadness. 3 months I had the flu. I felt cold and breathless. Meaning that normal life was suspended until the corpses were released and buried. Families described frozen lives in which fathers and mothers could not function and could not do anything other than negotiation, solidarity with other families, and prayers for the return. Now, withholding bodies make the killed Palestinian and Kashmiri exists more despite their death. Their death become like only biological, but they continue to live socially and politically. Death becomes a matter of being for the dead and the family. They live, the families live through their beloved death, non-stop until they receive and bury the body. As the song in the film says, the tyrants who buried his body in prison should know that he lives on in thoughts of his people. Now, another point is that at the beginning of the film, we could see one mother saying that some disappeared and they don't know what happened to them because some were forced to disappear, some have vanished. Now, for Palestinians in the study, the fact that they did not see their son or daughter created kind of hope that they might be alive but prisoned. Families expressed the need to see their beloved dead in order to be convinced and believe that they are really dead. Just to conclude, in settler colonial regimes, we can say that the body is resignified as a political body and becomes a space for restructuring the sovereign relationships between the colonizer and the colonized. And we can claim that as part of this resignification, the colonizer otherizes the colonized death, making it undeserving of sorrow or grief. And necrocapitalism actually becomes not only the sovereignty over who deserves to die and who deserves to live, but also in Palestine, Kashmir, and other colonized contexts is to decide upon who deserves to be buried, who deserves to be mourned, and who deserve to grieve and to manage the death of their beloved. I will stop here, but we'll be happy to answer any question. Okay, I will stop also sharing the screen. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Suhad, for those insightful comments. So now the way I think it will work out is out of honesty, this is the first time we do a Kashmir-Palestine conversation. We have the producer of this film, Dr. Talat Bhat, who is with us together with Suhad. There we go, on the screen. I came up with a bunch of questions, which I'd like to sort of share with both of you. And then there's also some folks in the audience that we can also ask questions to, both as well as online. So I think this question of, firstly, I'd like to thank you, Dr. Talat, for this film, as well as obviously Dr. Suhad for your comments. I think there is a larger sense of ignorance in the broader, let's say, Western sphere, as well as academic as well, around this topic, and Dr. Suhad pointed to that. Can you, Dr. Talat, give us a little bit more insight as to why the Indian authorities refuse to return the bodies of some who are killed versus others? Is there any, can you, and I'll follow the same question to Dr. Suhad afterwards. So what are your comments on the criteria that are being used for return versus no return?
Okay, just want to clarify, I'm not a doctor. I wish to be a doctor and I will be one day, not yet. I'm a documentary filmmaker and activist. Anyway, why they are not giving Maqbool Bhat remains back? Because he is an ideologue, and who started the independent Kashmir movement. And he traveled from Indian side to Pakistani side. He started campaigning Pakistani side, then he went back to Indian side. Then he was labeled as an Indian Pakistani agent, and when he came back to Pakistani side, he was blamed as an Indian agent. So that's a blame game. But at the same time, the nationalist independent Kashmir movement is he's the pioneer and ideologue. That's why they don't want to give back his remain back. So any because ideologies are very important. I mean, when you struggling for independence. Kashmir is multi-ethnic, multi-religious, multi-linguist, state. So that's not just one dimension we have to see. In this documentary, I will explain, which dimension I put in, actually, to more show the secular, because there was a non-Muslims and Muslims, and that's like it's a Sufi tradition based on the societies, and she's practicing that kind of rituals. So, and why? Okay, I'm come back to the India. It's very simple because he's ideologue. Because in India, if you look at Che Guevara, or it's Bhagat Singh, who was, hanged in 1931 in India by the British India. They buried, they just burned his body, same as Che Guevara. And Maqbool Bhat was inspired by the Che Guevara, and we call him the Che Guevara of Kashmir.
Thank you for that. But can we expand beyond Maqbool Bhat? Do you have statistics at all on the number of bodies that are willing to that have not been returned yet, and what the political criteria of those who have been killed versus?
We have 20,000 plus people that are disappeared since 90s, so we don't know. They crossed borders, they killed on borders, because the people, actually, the young generation in 90s. My generation, actually, in teenagers to early 20s, they came to Pakistani side Kashmir. It was like just lured by the Pakistanis and Islamic fundamentalists to train them and then send them back. But anyway, in that whole, since 20 to 25,000 people are missing, disappeared. And we have around 5,000 to 6,000 unmarked graves. Mostly they're militants, local, or foreigners, basically. The people who came on the name of jihad for different other countries, mostly Pakistanis and Afghanis. So we have like around 6,000 unmarked graves. There's only numbers, and so that's the statistics.
Thank you, Talat.
And
continue.
Also, there's tens of thousands. You're talking about 20, 30,000 people are in the jail in different parts of India. And they all are different level of political activities, not just the militant. Militant, they just shoot them. So there's any political activity is it's forbidden right now since after the 5th of August 2019 when they took so-called even our autonomous. So after that, it's totally impossible to do anything, any political practice, even the pro-Indian leadership. I mean, a member of parliament, the chief minister was putting under house arrest for 6 months. There was no internet. I mean, that's the situation. It's a full-scale occupation.
Thank you, Talat. Dr. Nashef, can you give your own insights as to the political criteria, or what's the part of the logic? What are they doing here?
Yeah, to my knowledge, at least, and maybe I'm missing some information, but at least up until the study was done, there were kind of conditions to release the bodies, and these conditions included the time when to bury the body, or who is allowed to be present during the burial, or to take photos, or there were some restrictions and conditions that imposed on families if they want to take back the bodies. Now, I'm talking here about the bodies that were withheld and frozen in the refrigerators. These restrictions were even harder when we talk about the bodies of the Jerusalemite people, because Jerusalem as a sacred space for the Israelis, like they cannot allow a public burials and rituals, while, for example, you can see in Al-Khalil, Hebron, you can see more big burials, and thousands of people came to the burial ceremonies and to express their pain and empathy with the families. While in Jerusalem, for example, it was much more restricted. And I think many of the Jerusalemite families could tell about how much time it took them to negotiate gaining back the bodies of their beloved, which took sometimes months and more than a year. Making it depends on which context we are talking about. So for Israel, for example, since Jerusalem is like, it's an Israel sovereign space, they cannot allow, while in Al-Khalil, or in the West, in any area in the West Bank, it was easier for the families to break the negotiations and to lead the negotiations and to make kind of pressure. Now, going back to the remains that were buried in the secret cemeteries of Numbers, it depends on negotiations between the political powers more than negotiations with families. So at least I remember that there was a release in 2012, 2014, and it was based on negotiations between political powers more than negotiations with individual or with families only, like let's say the detention of the bodies in 2015 and until today.
Okay, very interesting. Thank you. I'm kind of curious to what extent this phenomenon of non-returnal of bodies must have also generated a legal paper trail around it, with families appealing. How is the state or the occupying army or state, I'm not sure which entity is actually answering all the time, what are they saying, and what are they using in their excuses? We'll start with Talat, please.
Well, it's very simple. I mean, how they are using this, because there are Islamic fundamentalists, I mean, sponsored by Pakistan, not any longer, but historically since 90s, because it started by the secular movement, then it's Islamization and by Pakistan. And that's like the Hindu or like Indian nationalist narrative came, and that way we are killing the Islamic fundamentalists. And that is one of the reasons. I mean, the whole world is not saying anything because it's so that is round. I mean, they're killing the local people and the foreigners. Oh yeah, Islamists, but there are Islamists. I mean, who want to to work or for accessing to Pakistan or Islamic State, but there are not so many. So India is the Hindu majority, and now what we see in the last 10 years is the rise of Hindu fundamentalism in India, and they are actually justifying the killing. I mean, they are Islamic. I mean, they are they are Kashmiris and they are like Muslims, and we can kill them because they are sponsored by Pakistan. So that is one of the reasons. And just want to say, when we have the bodies of the militants who were killed, even if whoever. So there's, it's like tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands people come for the funerals. Even the Kashmir is the most highly, it's like a militarized zone in the world. 700,000 Indian army there. The curfew is almost every day, second day or something. But in that situation, when they kill any militant, innocent or whatever circumstances, you're talking about 100,000 people coming out for the funeral. So that became a symbol. That became a resistance. And actually, each funeral, there's more people are actually getting killed by the army bullets. So that's
thank you, Talat. Suhad, the legal paper trail of this phenomenon, how does the state defend itself in these actions?
Yeah, actually, in the Israeli context, let's say that the international law says clearly that it's against the human rights to do what they do, and even the Israeli Supreme Court said clearly that, stated clearly the importance of respecting the killed or the dead body of what they call the enemy, or what they mean the Palestinian, of course. Now, but the Israeli policy is always like to freeze the law by the law, which means like they create a law that allowing them to do that under the claim of maintaining security, especially if we talk about Jerusalem, for example. For the security of the space, security of the people, we cannot allow, these big protests and the burials, etc., etc. So I think what they do is like freezing the law and creating another law or a different law. So it's like they're breaking the law by the law.
Very interesting. Thank you. I would like to encourage everybody. Go ahead, Talat. Yes.
The court process, I mean, that happened only with Makbul Bhat in 1984 and Afzal Guru in 2016. So that is the only legally actually challenged, but no, I mean, nothing happened basically. And when they hanged them, they buried in the jail. So that is very unique in that situation. And rest people are arrested when they get killed. I mean, in a fighting. But these two people, what we mentioned in this film, Makbul Bhat and Afzal Guru, they was actually hanged by the court of India, and they buried in the jail. So that's we tried by all means to have any court hearing or anything. There's nobody wants to entertain, because that is like the enemy of the whole India. That's how they portray.
I'm sure, but so the state doesn't respond, or it says you can't have it because he's an enemy of the state and live.
Nothing happened. Yeah, there's no petition taken on this.
Okay. I would like to encourage anybody in the audience online if you would like to ask any questions, put them in the question and answer feature. I will ask one more question to both of our discussants. The prevention of returning the bodies to the families speaks to an invisible sort of dimension to and a particularly punitive dimension to these policies. It doesn't, withholding a body serves no clear military purpose, no economic purpose, but it does do something to people's, something that's invisible out there. So I would like both of our speakers to speak to this war that exists in this invisible realm. What other dimensions does this affect and touch upon? What other forms of repression or policies do we know of that are within this realm that seemingly do not serve clear military or strategic purposes, but have some form of punitive, internal, invisible dimension to it? Talat, your thoughts?
Well, how we see it's only the ego of the Hindu nationalism in India is fulfilling this, nothing else.
But it's in which other forms does it take, Talat? If you have thoughts to it, you spoke to the ideological, so maybe that's what you're meaning there. Yeah,
because for India, for example, it's much easier to deal with only Islamists and pro-Pakistani leadership. And in this case, Maqbool Bhat case, I mean, he was also tortured in Pakistan and blamed and labeled as an Indian agent. So, I mean, so they cannot justify basically in that way. I mean, he was Islamist, he was secular, and then also he was working for independent and united secular Kashmir. So that is even more dangerous for India to give the body back, because that ideology is even more dangerous. And since for India is dividing Kashmir on the name of religion, and same as Pakistan, so, and that's uniting force is only Maqbool Bhat ideology based on secular identity as a Kashmir state. So that's why one of the reasons is like, because that is the majority of the Kashmiri people believe on his ideology. Whenever, I mean, even the Hindus, with all the religions, and whenever if we have a dialogue, so that will be the only way forward for us.
If you'll allow me,
yeah,
because it speaks to this, something that's not seen, a punishment that is directed at a question of mourning, of one's morale. Where do we see these other forms, or are there other forms of attack like this, or attempt to incur injury that are not seen? You understand?
As a Kashmir conflict, I mean, by India, what do you mean that?
Yes, absolutely.
You can see what happened. They couldn't defeat us until 2019. Even we have unique, I mean, so-called autonomous. Even they took it away. I mean, they want to do as much, give us punishment as much they can, and they can justify it on the name of national ego. So
thank you,
yeah.
Okay, so I'll take the same question to Suhad if you have anything to say about these dimensions.
Yeah, talking about militaristic purposes, actually the idea of the act of withholding Palestinians back then in 2015 was proposed and led by Israel Public Security Minister and approved by back then the Prime Minister. However, the military system were not so much satisfied, claimed that many corpses, talking about the cemeteries, the secret cemeteries of numbers, were already being withheld by Israel, and that similar strategies were minimally effective in the past. So the military system was not so much in favor with this practice. But talking about, let's say, invisible punishment, it's clear that it's like punishing the families, using the body or the dead beloved. They know exactly what pain they can cause, and they know exactly how much important for families to bury the body directly after death. And to be honest, one of the things that the study explored is the pain that is, let's say, a little bit, I don't want to say higher, or it's more difficult for families when the body is of a woman. it was a little bit harder for the families, because for them it's like they thought about what will happen with the body or exposure of the body. And actually the first biggest protest in Al-Khalil was because the main argument of the families was that the bodies of our girls, we want our girls, and etc. etc. So the political system, or the colonized system, it knows exactly what is painful for the society, and they work on it. It's important for them to bury the body directly after death. It's important for them let's say not to expose the females' bodies, and they use that like of punishing the families. And but then, talking back about the military, as I said before, it was not like something that they really supported, but it was a decision and they follow it.
Great, thank you. So we have one question from the question and answer field. It comes from one Rebecca Vince. Can you speak about the role of music as a form of protest in these contexts? And she points to MC Cash and Palestinian counterparts. So yes, there was some special music in the film. Talat, do you want to speak to some of that?
Well, MC Cash, actually, his name is Roshan Alai. He's based in Srinagar in Indian occupied Kashmir. So he's a pioneer and very much influenced by American and English rappers. So he started actually in early 2000s. So he did very well resistance music. I mean, in English mostly. So it's that is like a turning point actually. And now we have like a 10, 20, 30. I mean, I don't even count. I mean, how many we have English. I mean, like a resistance music, mostly in rap. Obviously, we have in Urdu and our local languages, but it's but international attention we got when the MC Cash came up with a good songs, and one of his songs about Makbul Bhat, what we showed in this documentary. So it's yeah.
Great, thank you. Suhad, do you have anything to add to the question of music?
No, to be honest, I'm not. I'm not. Let's say research on this domain, but a lot have been written about using arts, including music as a resistance tool, or a resistance, or a way to express political attitudes and ideas. But unfortunately, not so much familiar with these works that especially that are related to withholding bodies. Sorry.
No worries. Thank you very much. I just want to make sure that we get this in the recording, because there was a comment made in the chat from Rohi Jehan, who adds to some of the conversation that we've been having, apparently answering the legal, or speaking to the legal question that I had asked, what is part of the paper trail? And Rohi writes, when Afzal Guru was hanged, the High Court of India said he should be hanged to satisfy, quote, the collective conscience of Indian society. Athar Zia has written about it in the Killable Kashmiri Body. I'll provide both of you the opportunity to say anything if you would like to add to that. Talat?
Exactly what I mentioned. It's like, so that's like a national ego, for the name of national ego. Okay, you hanged him, that person, you have punished, but still you want to punish the body. So that is symbolically, they want to punish the whole Kashmiri nation. So that is on the name of national ego.
Suhad, do you want to add?
No.
Good. Okay. So I'm going to move to our in-studio audience. I apologize that we do not have a walking microphone. We have one, but it was creating weird feedback loops between the different folks. So I'm going to ask one of our audience members who has a question here to come and sit here, if that's possible, so we can just make sure that we get it. This is actually our yesterday's keynote speaker, Dr. Goldie Osuri,
Hello.
who is here in our studio audience. And she has a question for both of our speakers. Go ahead.
Not so much a question, if that's okay.
Please.
I just wanted to add to what Talat and Suhad said, but also to what Rohit Jahan was saying about the killable Kashmiri body. I mean, Talat and Suhad absolutely right in the way that the forms of the state, this idea of withholding the body and disallowing mourning, as you put it, but I also wanted to shed light on the current forms. Rohit brought this up with Afzal Guru. So just to give a little bit background, I think there is Talat, you might agree, there's a bit of a difference between the Maqbul Bhat hanging and the Afzal Guru hanging, because Maqbul Bhat obviously is jailed for the freedom activity, and then the body is not returned. But with Afzal Guru, he was wrongfully convicted of an attack on the Indian Parliament, but then there was no evidence to prove, and in fact there was not really any evidence to prove that he was part of the attack, and he said he was innocent all along. And so the non-return, the hanging in the jail, and then the hanging, actually, the Supreme Court verdict and the hanging was said, there's significance to that idea of collective conscience to satisfy the collective conscience of India, even though the Kashmiri person has done no wrong. It's quite striking. I mean, Maqbul Bhat is for freedom. This person has done no wrong, but he's still to be hung because he's a Kashmiri body. And I think I just wanted to just clarify why Atharzia is talking about the killable Kashmiri body. There's a person who's done nothing wrong, but because they're Kashmiri, they're a seditious body. And just another comment to add to that, more recently, this form has taken, as Talat said, the militants, they're just shooting, but they're not giving back the body for mourning. And then the pro-freedom leaders, the freedom leaders, Gilani Saab, who just, I can't remember the date of his death. Was it last year or the year before? His son-in-law, last year, and his son-in-law just died, Altaf Shah Saab. And Gilani Saab, Gilani Saab was under house arrest. He passed away, he was 90. They did not let them bury the body. They buried the body at midnight or something. I mean, again, the disallowance of any public funeral that I think, Suhad, you were mentioning about in Jerusalem. And because they're such major icons of freedom, whether it's the pro-Pakistan version of freedom or the Maqbul Bhat version of an independent nation, there are two different versions of freedom. So I think they're both threatening, and so this killable body, but also the body that must be buried without any visibility whatsoever and very quickly, or like Altaf Shah Saab, who just passed away, and his daughter was pleading on social media for the body. For him to be returned to the family when he was alive. They didn't, and then he died in custody, and then again they were this quick, I think, without mourning. So it's the level of threat they feel about any Kashmiri version of freedom, I think, and striking. I just wanted to add, I'm sorry.
Thank you. No, don't apologize. That's the purpose of this discussion. Actually, I want to give Suhad an opportunity to respond if you have anything to say to that.
Yeah, thank you very much. And sorry, I missed your speech, your presentation yesterday. Unfortunately, I had something to do at my work, but I was looking for, but hopefully in the future. Talking about time and space, I totally agree. And actually time was kind of crucial factors while managing the burial of the bodies, especially in Jerusalem. But it doesn't mean that in the West Bank it was fine. It means that the families did what they want. For example, at least at the beginning, for example, the son of Tharwat al-Sha'rawi, who was 60 plus years old, who was killed while she was driving her car by a petrol station. He carried her on his hand, and they said that they did not allow him to have many people, and it was very hard for him, because even to accept these conditions. Now we have to understand that these families are also under the pressure that on one side they have the conditions that they are allowed to take back the body, but on the other side they have their collective commitment to their people. So it's like there is kind of conflict that what was let's say interesting in the study, that the families, they wanted collective negotiation, not a negotiation based on individual case, but also they were very much empathetic and could understand person who decided to make the individual negotiation and take back the body. They were not judgmental. They did not try to make kind of pressure or something. Maybe they talked to them, but they did not excluded or make him out of the collective. So it means there was kind of usage of the time and the space as tools to make a pressure on the family, especially that they did not want them to be seen in the space. And if we talk about Fahad Shah, she's an older adult woman actually, that she was killed in her car, and as was said, it's not that she did something wrong or she tried to do anything. She killed because she was Palestinian in a place that there was a soldier who decided to kill her.
Thank you for those comments. In fact, part of this discussion made me remember different things about this. So May Masri, Palestinian filmmaker May Masri, has a film about the first Intifada in Nablus, and the first 10 minutes of it are actually documenting the fact that at late at night, the police or the army decides to give back a body, and the body of a certain person is killed, and she documents this on film, and very restricted people are actually allowed to attend this. The funeral, but she goes and attends it and films it. So for those film buffs out there, that might have been an interesting film to parallel, although of course it's addressing the larger phenomena of the Intifada. The second thing that came to my mind on this, if I might allow to abuse my command of the microphone a little bit. Last year during the the May protests, and I don't know if you call it a war, but the 10-11 days that sort of exploded, that starting with the protests in Sheikh Jarrah, where we are here today, as well as in Jerusalem and beyond, that expanded, eventually spilled over into Gaza. There was some shocking footage that came out of Al-Maqasid hospital, I believe either Maqasid or Al-Muttala hospital, where some people had been killed in demonstrations. And then all of a sudden, a journalist captures the fact that Palestinians go to the hospital and are taking the body and dragging it, trying to desperately get it over a wall and outside of the hospital so that they can go to bury it, because they anticipate the fact that the army would come to take the body and then never give it back. So that's also something to look into. Additionally, two other points that I was thinking of, obviously this conversation stimulates, is the fact that not just they prevent to return the bodies in Palestine, we have also, of course, a major phenomena now of the explosion of homes of people who have been accused of being engaged in military attacks. And now, not just the prevention of work permits for the immediate family, but in fact, just last month, Yadi declared that people from the wider circle of friends, anybody who is basically in a kind of inner social network, I don't know exactly how it's determined, but the idea clearly is to expand, but also focus and take punishment against, and to demonstrate to a community, both the people who are associated with this person, but also, of course, the demonstrative aspect of it, where everybody sees that, oh my gosh, 50 people who were associated with this one person because they were in his telephone book will all now lose their permits. So this is something that is also taking place that it is part of the technological dimension that we are seeing, sort of adding a repressive layer to these actions. I want to give the opportunity for either of you two to respond to those comments. And if anyone has any more questions, we can go to them, but we are getting close to the end of time. So Talat, do you have anything to say?
No, I'm all right. It's okay. Yeah. If you have any questions, I can.
Suhad, you have something to say? Anything to my?
Oh no, I totally agree with you. I think this is part of the collective punishment. When you punish the people who were in contact with that person, it's like, it's a threatening for future potential friends of somebody. So it's like, using these techniques in order to like teach people about how to behave in the future. So it is like collective punishment. And yes, some of the families experienced midnight, attacks by the soldiers, or searches at homes, or home demolitions, etc., etc. So it is part of the punishment. So the punishment does not stop with holding the body and freezing it, but also it extended to the daily life of the families. And even some of the families said that they didn't know about, for example, their sons or daughters' intention to do anything, which means they continue to experience what happened in the daily life, although they even didn't know about anything. So it is like punishing the families and the parents just for being parents. And it is like, a threat for other families, I believe, at least, making the punishment visible for other families.
So we have one more question in the audience. I'm just going to add on to it because it builds off of the technological dimensions, and folks in the audience who work on this might find it of interest. So the situation in Jerusalem has been very, boiling in the last months, as I presume our audience members know or should know. And on Facebook, we are receiving now in Jerusalem videos that are sponsored videos in Arabic that say Bidna Naish, that come from the website Bidna Naish, which means we want to live. And they are showing videos of the homes of people accused of engaging in attacks or who may have been killed in attacks, being exploded, and then saying, who's next, basically. So basically what we're probably witnessing here is sort of covert dimensions of the military intelligence or occupation army, basically using Facebook in a very provocative fashion to sort of basically saying, we're willing to take out your whole family's house. And this was obviously in the particular case of Uday Tamimi, who was accused of having attacked a checkpoint in Sharafat refugee camp and had escaped for 10 days afterwards. So this is 10-day window. So I just want to make sure that that's documented, because I personally was able to document it, by the way, if anyone is interested. So we have one more question from the audience, and it's from our my colleague in this, where I'm going to ask her to come up, Dr. Emma Brandlund. Emma, go ahead, say your question or comment.
Hello, hi. So I thought maybe just to end this session, I just wanted to look back to the start and the film. So maybe Talat, you can talk a little bit about the challenges of making this film, bringing back, particularly in context of the specific topic on the refusal to return dead bodies. And ultimately also would like to hear a little bit about the responses to the film, both from the state, as well as from activists, as well as from Kashmiris from all parts of Kashmir.
Well, this documentary took me more than 7 years to make. So Fahad Shah, I met him when he was maybe 19. Online we met, and then I'm trying to convince him if he can film with me, because I know the Bhat family, because his brother was in Pakistan side of Kashmir for a long time. So he's almost my age. So I convinced him to, can we film? Because that's the family was not allowing anyone to be filmed. So it's like remotely, I was where I cannot travel. I mean, I live in Sweden. I'm from Pakistani occupied Kashmir, and the film is based in Indian side of Kashmir. And Fahad Shah, he managed to film according to, story we changed. I mean, it was just to start filming, and then we see actually what you can see in the end with Coffin. We wanted to bring it out actually to do the international campaign, but still we couldn't manage to bring the Coffin out because that even it's in the pieces. It's portable in the pieces, so we wanted to bring it out, that Coffin actually to do the international campaign. We couldn't manage last September since we released the film. So the making of that film is obviously the first actually cassette. I mean, there was not so fast internet, so it took me 6 months to get out the first footage. It was smuggled via some journalists based in Delhi coming back to Berlin, and then I got to cassette. But the last bit, when I was filming, they were filming right away with the camera. I could see because of the internet. And also I tell them, okay, I want this camera angle, this is what I want. So it's, anyway, that's, so working remotely, it took me much more longer time, but we managed. Because the contact directly with the family, and also the Fahad was there, and these Bhat, actually the village is like on control line area, and it's from Srinagar is the capital of Indian side of Kashmir. It's like 6-7 hours away, remote. So if you travel one day, you cannot come back. Basically, you have to stay there. So that kind of thing there is when we brought her to Srinagar, the capital. So it took much longer time than it should have done. So that's and why I want to do this. I mean, that's because I want to put the whole ideology and the Kashmir conflict and show who was Maqbool Bhat. He's telling we have only his wife because he was hanged in 1984. I mean, he was in prison for some years. So whatever audio we have is before 80s, early 70s to the late 70s. So we had only audio to understand actually his ideology. The rest is only his interviews and text. So these are the slogans, but that's the ideology of his slogans. I mean, we could see what he's teaching actually to the Kashmiri youth or Kashmiri nation. Yeah, so that's and also other dimension what I try to show because it's mostly Indian. It's like, you know, it's like whole Kashmiri Islamic fundamentalists. They are coming from Pakistan, sponsored, and they are Al Qaeda or ISIS, whatever, and they are Wahhabis. Wahhabi being hardcore Muslims, but Kashmir society is based on Sufi traditions. As you can see, the rituals that she is going through different shrines, but it's forbidden in Wahhabi religion, but is in majority of Pakistan is Wahhabi or Deobandi. I mean, that kind of sect. But Kashmir society is based on Sufi traditions. I mean, the ritual that she was doing, there was Hindu and Buddhist mixed kind of rituals when she's putting the hands on and putting some sort of dust from the shrine and putting on the body. I mean, that's like more Hindus and Buddhist rituals. She went to the Sikh temple as well. I mean, to pray. I mean, that's not a big issue in Kashmir. So that is, our society is based on secular, and that's what the Pakistan and India is trying to mix up with the religious question, but it's not a religious question. But if Kashmiris cannot live together, Kashmiri means the state of Jammu and Kashmir people, Hindus, Buddhists, and Sikhs and Asais. So how the India can be a one country, and how the Pakistan can be 4 different ethnic groups can live in one country. So that is also different dimensions I try to explain through Maqbool Bhat's mother. Thank you.
Yeah, just you also want to talk a little bit quickly about the responses. I think we are running out of time, but if you want to say a few words about that. Yeah, to Talat, but also Suhad, if you have any further comments, just to wrap up today's event.
I just, sorry.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. I just have one comment on what mentioned before by Tawfiq regarding Jerusalem. I think what happened in Shireen Abu Akleh's funeral can remind us about what Jerusalem's space means to the Israeli military forces. I think preventing her funeral from going in Jerusalem streets was a say that these streets cannot be, let's say, or cannot host a dead Palestinian body, or a dead Palestinian body cannot walk through these streets, even if they are Jerusalemites. So it means it takes us back again and again how much Jerusalem is like specifically a very sacred space for the Israelis, and I think we know why. It's obvious, but I think what happened with the Shireen Abu Akleh remind us again and again, what does that mean in terms of political, what does that mean a space in terms of political and colonized spaces.
Yeah, Talat, do you want to add something?
No, I'm all right. I mean, I think I have explained everything.
All right. With that said, actually, just to build off of what Suhad just said, actually, the incidents that you captured, that were captured on scene with the beating of the pallbearers, actually took place 100 meters from where this is taking place. So, and indeed, it's a good observation because ultimately what it means is that they want to prevent the memory that this of the passage of this body to connect the body and all that it symbolizes with the place and to enshrine that in memory. So with that said, I do want to say quickly that so this has been the first in the Kashmir-Palestine Conversations series. Yesterday was the launching of the Kashmir-Palestine Scholars Solidarity Network. Somebody mentioned a little bit earlier that they missed, it was Suhad, I think, who missed Goldie's talk. We were about to get that online, both on our website as well, kashmir-palestine-scholars.org. And also the Kenyan Institute will have that up on their website soon. So just keep an eye out for that. We also want to make sure that folks on this network save the date for the forthcoming Palestine-Kashmir Solidarity Network Conversation series, which will be on the economic dimensions. And the economic dimensions, we will be having Dr. Subhi Samour from Al-Quds University Bard College, speaking in conversation with Dr. Mehroush Tak from the Royal Veterinary College in London. That will be taking place on the 23rd of November at 3 p.m. UK time, 5 p.m. Jerusalem time, 8:30 p.m. Srinagar time. So just check out our website. It will be both on the Kenyan Institute's website as well as that of the network. So without further ado, thank you for everybody, particularly to our speakers, the director, Dr. Talat Bhat and Dr. Suhad Nashef, as well as one final reminder that we are calling through this event for the release, unconditional release of Dr. Fahad Shah, who has been in prison, the director of the film that we watched today. Check it out online from Raw Films. That's bringhimback.info. So thank you for that event and have a good evening. Take care.
Thank you very much. Thank you.